Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Title IX Insider. Today, we are having a very special conversation on Title IX coordinators that typically get very misunderstood on campuses. And our guest is Azure Swinford, who is part of our team. She is a former Title IX coordinator and investigator, and she just has a wealth of information. And today, we're just going to discuss what our experiences have been to kind of highlight and give some insight into the Title IX coordinator world. And so with that said, Azure, would you like to just introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, thank you so much, Sandy. I'm so glad to be here and do this podcast with you. Um, just a full disclosure, this is my first podcast, so I'm so grateful to you and Title IX coordinating group to allow me to be here today. So I'm Azure Swinford. I've been doing Title IX work since 2018 in both the K through 12 environment and higher ed. I think I have held most all positions in the Title IX world. Um, and I'm very happy to continue with the work. I am happy that the work is more well known because, as you and I are going to talk about today, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what Title IX is, what role they have on campus, and how to make it work best for each and every institution.
Correct. Yeah, very, very true. And if you have been enjoying what we're doing as a podcast, please be sure to subscribe to us and like us, and please leave a comment, especially on our topic of today. And so, Azure, let's just jump in. I know that you and I have had many conversations about how Title IX coordinators really get misunderstood. I know that when I have been a Title IX coordinator, one of the biggest misconceptions I get asked about is, are you sure you're not an advocate? Are you siding with the complainant? Are you more leaning towards the respondent? And I know that one of the things I've always commented on, and it's always been a struggle, is to really relay the fact that as a Title IX coordinator, you are supposed to be a neutral party, a neutral individual to cases for both sides. And so let's chat about it. Like, what do you think?
Absolutely. It has been interesting to hold that position because most people who come into this work are because they are interested in social justice and civil rights. They want to make sure that there is safety on campuses. And so people come to this work with that heart in mind. The Title IX coordinator specific role is the neutral role and needs to maintain that fairness and balance in that space. While there are other roles on campus to support the complainant or the victim, a survivor advocate, or counseling services that can hold that space for a person or a party involved in a situation that they would find themselves communicating with the Title IX coordinator. But yet there are often times when not only the parties involved, say the students, let's talk about students because primarily, most institutions are going to be dealing with students for a Title IX coordinator. So the students want the Title IX coordinator to be comforting and side with them and make them and reassure them that they're on the right track. But you have to maintain that neutrality while speaking with them. And then also internal stakeholders on campus will also maybe feel that way as well, thinking that the Title IX coordinator is a survivor advocate, like you said, or a counseling individual. You know, meanwhile, the role is so specific and it's legal.
Many times individuals are confused and then sometimes walk away disappointed in the Title IX coordinator because they're thinking to themselves, well, they weren't as supportive as I thought they were going to be. They didn't give me the therapy that I thought I needed, or the right words of comfort. And although a Title IX coordinator should still be sympathetic, to a degree and kind in the conversation and all of the good things that a person should be conveying to someone that is coming to you with a concern or, any type of emotion. At the same time, as a Title IX coordinator, you need to be that professional in that role as well. And, the reality is, as a Title IX coordinator, the professional role is the most important aspect of the Title IX coordinator, to check off the boxes. And I hate saying that, check off the
Mhm.
boxes, but it really is checking off the boxes of what regulation is asking the Title IX coordinator to kind of do in order to ensure that something meets the Title IX threshold, to ensure that you're providing the supportive measures, those options for the individual, and yet still try to not be leaning into the advocate, survivor advocate role, or the counselor role if it's a respondent, or the complainant. And so it's such a difficult kind of balancing act to play many times. And I know I've seen it where there is disappointment sometimes where people are like, well, that Title IX coordinator is not good. And it's like, well, are you sure? Or are they good because they are actually doing what they're supposed to do, being neutral?
Mhm, mhm.
Right?
Yes, I've been in a position where while offering resources on campus, been told that I was unsupportive and victim shaming. And so I learned as a Title IX coordinator to be very careful when offering the resources on campus, even because although to check that box, I want to make sure that they do understand that the resources that we would offer, even local resources that we would offer, because I want them to be equipped with the items when they need it. We're fostering this culture of being and holding space for people. And although, as a Title IX coordinator, you do want to do that, we're not counselors. There is a misunderstanding, I think, in general overall for, students, faculty, staff, and external parties that we are social workers or counselors. Oftentimes it's that there's a disappointment not only for not supporting the complainant or the victim or the survivor as they would want, but also that we can't just immediately issue discipline for someone who's alleged to have done harm. And there's a huge disappointment in that. Then they think that oftentimes people might think that, well, what's the Title IX coordinator for if they can't issue discipline? and so
Right.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And we can jump right into that because that's the truth. It's, as a neutral authority on a campus for Title IX, we are the ones that are ensuring that the ship is literally going straight and is not diverging one way or the other. We have to ensure the due process of the respondent, and we have to ensure that the complainant is safe, in case what she or he is accusing took place did in fact happen. And so we need to ensure that there is a process. So that way the process is completed. And then when the process is completed, there is a finding of responsibility or no responsibility. And that's where the consequence comes into play. We cannot immediately provide a consequence at the moment there is a complaint. And you're right. That's it's so difficult, and it really is something to, it really is important to state that I think the Title IX coordinator, above all other roles in the Title IX process, is the primary role that cannot lose neutrality, cannot in any way shift from one side or the other, because if you do have that, it's going to be a domino effect. It's a domino effect to then state that the rest of the Title IX department, the rest of the Title IX process is not going to be fair. And there's going to
Mhm,
be some sort of non-compliance issue if
mhm.
that Title IX coordinator is not neutral. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree. Because we want to be warm, we're human, but we are working within a legal framework. And we have to work within that legal framework and continue the process and procedures as lined out for us. Um, I think oftentimes another misunderstanding is that we've written this policy because there's a difference between civil rights laws, Title VI, Title VII on a campus, and Title IX, and the procedures are different. And I think that is often misunderstood because it is so prescripted, and we do have to check the boxes. There are so many things that behind the scenes that we are doing within that legal parameter. And oftentimes, Title IX coordinators are not attorneys and are not housed under general counsel, but then live in this other space where it is known to provide space and comfort and care in all of the right ways. And then you have the Title IX office sitting in the middle of it, which is a very legal office. And so I totally agree. We are steering the ship, like you said, and making sure that all of those things in the process need to happen and happen correctly so that all of the other people and parties that are supporting throughout can do their jobs. And that's a really great way, I think, to think about it because we're holding we're holding the ground, for all of the rest of it to happen around it.
Right.
That's very, yeah, I like the way that you had presented that very much so.
You and I have not discussed this part of it, but it dawned on me as you're speaking that the rest of the pieces that we're observing, we're ensuring that they are available and that they're there, these resources, because we understand trauma-informed processes. We understand what a survivor needs. We understand what a respondent needs. And so when we understand all those things on all those pieces, unfortunately, we can't play the part for each of those pieces, but we understand them so deeply, which is why we create these lists of supportive measures, which is why we are then the ones implementing the accommodations. And we can't be there and hug an individual and say, we got you, do this. Even though inside, trust me, everyone, I'm sure most Title IX coordinators are rooting for certain situations and are definitely thinking they want to cry, they want to, have that human aspect. I know I talk about the human aspect for investigators, that they can have a human aspect. They don't need to be so cold all the time. Unfortunately, for a Title IX coordinator, the neutrality piece is so much more serious. And so when I say that, we are connecting these services because we know their importance. And we are in the back of our minds rooting for the fact that individuals are going to go to counseling, that they are going to contact the Rape Crisis Center, that they are going to reach out and speak to all these resources to obtain the support and the help, which is why we many times, I know I do, I'm sure you did too, repeat to individuals, do you want me to connect you with this resource?
Yeah. 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 Or even ask that resource to send out an email to the party. Yes, absolutely. Um, I also, yes, and oftentimes we might be rooting for informal resolution. We think that might be best suited for this individual case. But when the respondent or the complainant or their advisors are asking me what I think they should do, I can give them their options and lay out a path, but we can't actually tell them what we think they should do because that's not our space. That's not our place. That's why we have advisors.
That's right. That's why we say, please get an advisor, respondent and complainant. Get an advisor so they can advise you on the process. And here is the process. Formal process, informal process. What would you like to do?
And for best practices on campus to have all those internal departments and the workflow to be so tight that when we do go to an informal resolution process, the Title IX coordinator as well, and then can share with the advisor and the investigator and then the parties the options for that because that's going to be different on each campus. And I think that the misunderstanding internally also um, can cause issues on the best outcome for the parties when we are going for discipline if somebody is sanctioned, for everyone to understand the opportunities on campus, whether it be an educational opportunity or a local organization that we could, they could do some community service with and different things like that. And there are parties on campus who hold those cards, and we have to work very well with them in order to make sure that we know the landscape and we can give the options to the parties to make sure that they have the best outcome that they can get. And I think that the misunderstanding on campuses are that the Title IX coordinator can make all of the decisions, unilaterally. And so I feel like now the Title IX has been more, in the news, and everybody's really looking harder into it, and there's more understanding, and there's better staffing. I think that this is less frequent. However, you and I did talk about that there is a time, or was a time, and it's hopefully not so much now, but there was a time when the Title IX coordinators were housed in the basement. Their offices were like separated from everyone. And so this building of bridges and teams on campus can be more difficult for the Title IX coordinator because of the misunderstanding and of who we are and what our role actually is. And then also when usually if the Title IX coordinator is in a meeting, we come with a whole list of what campus should and could be doing differently. And so we're not always the favored party on campus. However, I think that's changing though.
I mean, I would hope so. I would hope so. I know that I shared with you that I have spoken to hundreds of Title IX coordinators just in my own dissertation and over the years and in the work that we do now for Title IX Consulting Group as well. And one of the constants that you just mentioned that you and I have talked about is how Title IX coordinators are not viewed in a positive light on campuses. And that goes from not just the students, but also the administration. Fellow administrators, I know that I've had it where I'm walking down a hallway and it's like, oh my God, you're here. Oh my God, is everything okay? I know when I see you, something is wrong.
Yes.
And the weight of a Title IX coordinator is very heavy, because it is walking around almost with a target on your back of negativity. Individuals see you as the bearer of bad news, the individual that's going to come into the room and point out, everything that's wrong, and the reality is many times, yes, things that are connected to Title IX are not always flowery. It's not always going to be roses. Um, but the Title IX coordinator is truly there to help protect the institution and also protect the constituents, the employees, the students. A true Title IX coordinator is there to help everyone to ensure the safety of the campus and the community, to help ensure that things are being followed legally correctly, and to work alongside general counsel, whether small campus or big campus. I know you mentioned the small campuses may not have general counsel. So sometimes they're calling law firms, to provide some general counsel advice. Either which way, one of the biggest, I think, misconceptions folks might think is Title IX coordinators are so loved on a campus. Many times it's unfortunately it can be negative. I shared with Azure the other day, it's almost as if you're the angel of death walking on campus at times.
I think now though, at least I'm seeing more, I mean, with social media, there's a huge opportunity to change that perspective for the Title IX team, the Title IX coordinator specifically, to be able to get out and do like campus events, take back the night events and different things, or, join in for some fundraising. Depending on your staffing and how much time you have available as a coordinator will probably determine whether or not you can do those things. But it does, because yes, like you said, it's like the harbinger of death. And I found myself saying, I am a nice person. I'm really actually very fun. But every time I talk to you, or every time I'm talking about something or presenting, it is like, where are our gaps? Here are the numbers. And this is what we need to do better. So, yes, I do think that there's a real humanistic approach to changing that narrative for the coordinators. However, there's a lot of work involved in that. And it doesn't change the fact that the coordinator role, it stays solid. There's the specific place for the coordinator, and there's a specific reason that the federal law requires a coordinator, because if you didn't have a Title IX coordinator, if that wasn't required, who would be doing the work? And most of those other people who could do the work are going to have a bias. And so that unbiased approach, that neutrality, is so important. It's so important so that the complainant and the respondent and the witnesses all have someone, like you said earlier, who understands all of the moving pieces and they're getting a fair shake. I have thought about that before. If we remove the Title IX coordinator, who is going to steer the ship, right? Could it be the dean of students? I'm sure they're perfectly capable. Yes, absolutely. The dean of students could do the work. But in their role, is that going to be fair? Like in the long run, is it going to be fair? Maybe not, because the dean of students has so many other reasons to speak to a student. And they may have a pretty big file in the dean's office. And then if they get a Title IX allegation against them, is that going to push them or push the dean or push whomever into making a determination before there's a full investigation, different things like that? And general counsel, yes, they're perfectly capable of doing it. However, general counsel has a specific role on campus to protect campus. And so I don't know how it could be any other way.
If I were to think about a campus without a Title IX coordinator, I truly think about chaos. I think about it's almost like having all of these sous chefs in the kitchen and everyone's chopping away, cutting on their own little boards and cooking their soup and their salad, but no one's kind of bringing it together. Like, what's the main course? What's the appetizer? You need to have someone that's behind the scenes really dictating, this is what's going to be first. This is what's second. This is what's third. Don't forget this. Don't forget that. Don't forget this. Don't forget that. Because there are so many pieces to it. And if you don't truly understand the intricate pieces and the why behind it and the trauma informed of it, a lot of things can get lost. A lot of re-victimization can happen. And I know that I've seen that from the expert witness point of view, on the cases and lawsuits that come to the table, for Title IX Consulting Group that I look at, where the campuses that do make the mistakes, it's where you've had a Title IX coordinator that truly didn't have the background, the understanding, the involvement, allowed everyone to do their parts without that coordination. And this is where you begin to see things falter.
The difference between the other civil rights laws and Title IX is that there's not a federal prescription on how you do Title VI and Title VII on a campus. You just have to do it, right? You have to have some sort of a policy, an anti-discrimination policy and procedure to make sure that that happens. But Title IX, all of the steps are clearly written out, and the number of people involved are clearly written out, and the Title IX coordinator role and the investigator role and the advisor role, and whether or not it goes to informal resolution or not, it's all clearly written out. And on campus, on most campuses, I think this is another misunderstanding, is that the work is so involved and time consuming. And I think that I've talked to people who have no idea. They have no idea, and that's okay because it's not their job. And so why would they? But because they have no idea, many people believe that it is similar to doing a Title VI or Title VII investigation, which sometimes can be open and closed fairly quickly. But even what I would consider like a smaller Title IX case or investigation is still going to take all of the steps, which take a lot of time. There's a lot of emails involved. There's a lot of checking in involved. There are templates that you need to make sure that you have all of the boxes checked. I think that a lot of people, once they understood the amount of attention to detail that is needed and necessary for the role, would be grateful that they are not wearing that hat, and that most campuses do have a full-time Title IX coordinator at this point. And if they don't, then those who do wear multiple hats, I'm sure will chime in. Hopefully we'll get some comments where they will agree. Yes, the Title IX coordinator role is in itself a full-time job. Plus, oftentimes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if any campuses out there that are watching this need support, contact us
Yes.
because we can definitely support and provide interim coordinators or support, mentoring, coaching, all of the above. And Azure, you hit it on the head. It really is something to think about when campuses don't recognize, individuals don't recognize how much work goes into being a Title IX coordinator. I think I've seen that on several positions I've had. They see me walk in, they see nothing's wrong, everything's great. Well, there's a lot of effort behind the door. A lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of communication, a lot of check-ins, communication with, I know that I've done a lot of mental health connections, where in dealing with cases, even informal resolutions, there is a lot of handing over individuals to therapists to ensure they're okay, and following up. And those follow-ups, let me tell you, you hear follow-up, and I think individuals might be thinking to themselves, oh, maybe one or two phone calls. No, this is something that goes on for a year or 2 years per case.
Long term,
Uh,
yes.
you have a situation and you are definitely checking in, but then they're also contacting you for various things. And, you are available for them. You are there to discuss things. And, it may not even be a formal complaint just yet. It might just be a conversation. They're checking in, they want to discuss something. And so it is a lot of effort from the Title IX coordinator that goes into play with all sorts of individuals that come to the table. It's not just those big cases that everyone expects or sees at times.
We also offer support for complainants who don't want to open a formal investigation, and then also respondents possibly too, depending on the situation. And so we might have, say, no contact orders, and they were freshmen when it happened. And so year over year, you want to check in with them and make sure that this is still working. And do we, has it expired? Or are you all still finding yourselves in classes? Check-ins before each semester to make sure that you have the classes apart from each other, and that maybe even the professors are made aware, depending on different things. And it is constant follow-up. And then I'm glad you mentioned that, because also with informal resolution and sanctioning, it is the coordinator's role to monitor to make sure that all parties are in compliance with whatever was decided, whether it's a sanction and you work with the dean's office or maybe not. And then also with the informal resolution, to ensure that whatever was agreed upon is completed. And that could also take several years. Hopefully it is just a school year, but sometimes it takes a lot longer, or over the summer. And then oftentimes, as you know, then the parties, sometimes will ghost the coordinator. And there is a lot of follow-up there because we don't want to not be in compliant. As the coordinator, it is our responsibility to continue to keep that chain of communication open. There's a lot of calendaring involved, you
And,
know.
and a lot of email, threads and that paper trail, so important because in case anyone asks, well, did you follow up? Yes, I did. Did they respond? No, but I followed up, and that is there to support that Title IX coordinator in showing that you were doing your due diligence at all times also. But yeah, there is a lot of communication for those formal cases, the cases that never become formal complaints, friendly warnings that I've mentioned in other
Mhm.
sessions, several friendly warnings, something might come up, doesn't meet that threshold, but you know what? You can still do a friendly warning, have that conversation with someone, let them know, you know what, this could potentially become something if you don't shape up. We don't want that to happen, type of conversation also, and then following up there. Sometimes multiple departments are involved. You have to get student affairs involved, the dean of students involved, you know, depending on your campus, the names of those departments, but you get those different departments involved when there might be an overlap also. And so there is a lot that goes into it. And the Title IX coordinator, again, is there to man the ship, steer the ship, and remain neutral at all times. And can be misunderstood, unfortunately. Title IX coordinators,
It's tough.
it's tough. It is
It's tough.
they're doing a lot. They're carrying the weight and the burden. They may not be the most favorite individual on campus because they are neutral. And then they were so misunderstood. Folks still believe sometimes that they're an advocate when they're not.
And I think that shows with the no contact orders. That's one area that I think is really truly misunderstood because many people think that a no contact order is a restraining order, but it's not. It's more like a civil no contact order, and it applies to both parties. And as the coordinator, delivering that message is can be difficult for the complainant specifically and the complainant supporters to hear, because they feel, and I understand. Like I really truly understand they feel like, well, why did I report this then? Because now I feel like I am getting the short end of the stick. Like I wanted support, and now I have to leave my class if I want to be away from this person, or I can't go in this area of the cafeteria, or whatever. And I feel like I'm being removed from my spaces. And I totally understand that. However, as the coordinator, it is our job to make sure that it is a neutral, no contact order. Um,
Yeah,
it's difficult.
which we like to call nowadays a mutual no contact order, right?
Oh,
That
yes.
is seen equally on both sides, like an equitable
Mhm.
no contact. It's not just one side versus the other, but a mutual no contact order.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, Azure, I think for today, I think that will kind of wrap up our podcast that went by super fast, but just thank you so much. I know that there is more to be said about the Title IX coordinator role, but I believe starting off with this discussion of how they're misunderstood so often. I know I've experienced it, you've experienced it, so many colleagues have experienced it. I would say 100% of the colleagues I know have experienced it.
Mhm.
Uh, Hopefully the word gets out, that A, if you're a Title IX coordinator listening to this, you're not alone. We truly
Mhm.
do understand. And B, if you're a parent or a student or a faculty or staff member watching this and you were trying to understand how is a Title IX coordinator misunderstood, hopefully this resonates with you. And maybe you can give a smile or a high five to a Title IX coordinator if you pass by one instead of being fearful when you see them in the hallway. I know that was never one of my favorite responses when folks see me. It's like, oh God, what's wrong? Um, But yeah, Azure, do you have any final words you'd like to share regarding this topic?
Yes, I think that we could have a whole series on this, and I just so appreciate being here with you and Title IX Consulting Group and doing the podcast. And I can't wait till the next one.
Great, me too. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching. We look forward to having you subscribe and like us. Again, leave a comment, especially if you're a Title IX coordinator or someone who has had any encounters with a Title IX coordinator. Let us know what you're thinking. We would love to do a series on this, just like Azure just mentioned. So maybe you will inspire the next topic of conversation with one of your comments. And so, with that said, Azure, thank you again. And everyone, have a great day.
Thank you.